Grow Great is a city government leadership podcast with Lisa Norris and me, Randy Cantrell. Each week we share insights, experiences, and wisdom to help you and your leadership grow great. Our website is growgreat.com.
One of the hardest things about being a leader, in my opinion, over the years is when you have an inherent disagreement with a teammate, whether it's a peer, whether it's your boss, whether it's a subordinate, the fact that they're bringing something to you and you cannot reach agreement on it is navigating that and navigating it well. They come to you with a problem. You don't see eye to eye on that problem. Your perspective is so different that you can't reach agreement. And you have to be able to not just hear what they're saying, but listen. This is applied so many times from when I've got people conflicting with one another, when ideas are so different and they perceive their way is right and the other person is wrong. It's a clear line in their mind. Those things are, they are difficult to navigate. More so when you go up versus out. Easier when you go down because you have the authority. But what do you do? What do you do to navigate that well? And I find it comes up not every day. I wouldn't say commonplace, because usually I can navigate them to see commonality and reach consensus on some things, not all things. But there are times when I've had challenges with people that either I don't agree with what they're bringing to me because I have a lot more perspective around it, or I've got team members within our team or outside of our team that are disagreeing. And I'm curious, Randy, I'm sure as a CEO, you saw this, whether it was a customer, whether it was your people, whether it was a team. Mine typically cross departments. Those are the harder ones to solve, because you only have one person that you have the authority over. And then you're trying to navigate, how do we make that work? Especially if there's something that is not working well and you agree with it not working well. But you cannot discredit another person. That's never what we should do as a leader. Have you experienced that yourself? Those are hard
never.
things. No. As a CEO, no.
Yeah,
It was glory days.
As I watch grandkids, younger kids, and as I think back when my children were small, there's these little skirmishes that come up. Oh. And it's just, y'all handle that. But then sometimes there are bigger things, and there needs to be some mediation. There needs to be some kind of wrangling of the emotions and all that.
Right.
I honestly don't understand the unwillingness to get in a room together when these kinds of things happen. As you were talking, I was thinking about a conversation that I was having not long ago with a leader who was describing some, two people, both who reported to him, and they didn't agree on something. And this disagreement has gone on and on and on. And I'm like, have you mediated this? No, I'm letting them work it out.
Mm-mm.
Problem.
It will never work it out.
Well, the problem is, as humans, we get involved in these arguments and we want to win the argument.
Yeah, it becomes emotional and personal.
The problem that we have in our families and in our personal lives and at work is we can win the argument and we can destroy the relationship. And that doesn't work. That's not profitable at home. It's not profitable at work. So if let's say we've got two directors and they're just at odds over something, and that something isn't trivial, okay, what do we do? Do we let them continue to duke that out? That relationship is only going to grow more adversarial, in my experience.
Right.
They're not going to kiss and make up and suddenly become best friends. That's not happening. And we don't need them to, but we need them to collaborate, and we need them to have a level of trust so that the performance can happen on behalf of the organization.
Mm-hmm.
And so who's thinking about what? Now, both could argue we're thinking about what's best for the organization. But that third person in a room, and I'm just going to say it because it's true, it helps if that's the boss.
Right.
It just does.
And it helps if they're a good mediator.
Yeah, absolutely.
You cannot, as a mediator, you cannot take sides. You have to be willing to hear each person and navigate through that dialogue and keep the energy in the room level, where it doesn't become H&E, huge and
Calm.
emotional. Right. You've got to listen to both sides. And if one is saying, well, that's not right, say, okay, why? Why do you feel that's, I mean, you can't say, no, I agree with you, because then they feel like then they don't agree with me, and you have taken sides at that point. So it's navigating it as a mediator. If you have the authority to do so, you're right, is very helpful.
But I think
if you do it well.
I think too many times the boss I just don't want to even, I got too much
There's
to
not
do.
courage to navigate it.
I don't want to do it. Where if you would pull back and you would do that, I'm trying to think of any example that I can remember where that just went south. Sometimes things go south before they go north. Sometimes it begins and there's hostilities, but I can't think of a single instance where it ended that way. I can't think of a single instance where there wasn't some meeting of the minds, but nor can I think of an instance where that boss, that voice of authority, kind of pushed the thing in a direction that was at some point in this mediation obvious. I've been in more mediations than I care to recount, and there's just always there's this pivotal point where everybody in the room really knows. Mm-hmm. They know what the wise course is. Doesn't mean they want to do it. I don't care if it's an employee thing or something else. There's just this point where you just need to take this deal because this is the right deal. This is the good deal. This is the right decision. Doesn't mean they always do it, but everyone that I've been involved in, and I think if we would spend some time to get to that point, right. But yes, it does take listening. It does take allowing people. My grandmother would put a tea kettle on, and these would just whistle. I don't know that they even make these things anymore.
They do. You
know, when the steam starts.
My grandma had one too.
The steam starts, the steam goes out that vent and it whistles to let you know, okay, the water's boiling. Mm-hmm. But that steam's got to go somewhere. Mm-hmm.
It's got to have a release.
This is not a closed teapot, and humans are the same way. So we have to give them some capacity in a safe space, would be my counsel, when we're trying to mediate this disagreement. But really, more importantly, we're trying to make the best decision for the organization.
Right.
We're trying to get this right. And so if we've got two opposing views on how to do something, both may be dug in believing my way is right. And as a point, both could be completely blinded to the fact there may be three other ways that are perfectly fine, perfectly acceptable, maybe even better than one that you're considering. Yeah. And being able to kind of impose that in a kind of non-imposing way can be beneficial.
This is a great, to your point, this is a great book. I don't know if you've ever read it, Randy, or if anybody on the call that's listening in on our podcast has read it. But this is a book, if you can see it, it's called 212 Degrees, The Extra Degree. Have you read it?
No.
It's fantastic, and it's by Sam Parker and Mac Anderson. We'll put it in the show notes. But the starting line is at 211 degrees, water is hot. At 212, it boils. And with boiling water comes steam, and steam can power a locomotive. So that, and it's the extra degree is the whole point of this book. And anybody that has this, you can order it, and it also has a CD, so you can show the video. It's like 2 minutes or something. It's a quick video, but it's a fantastic book to explain your very point. One, it's the power of the extra degree. But to our point, and you talk about humans, they can also boil, and you want it to boil to be a positive and resolve something, empower something, versus losing your cool and releasing the steam where it's unproductive, right? So it's navigating that. But
Well, the
when
first thing
you're
my grandmother would do would take this thing off the burner.
right,
So, okay, to your point, and the point of the
pulls
book,
it back down.
yeah, 1 degree, lowering the thing 1 degree makes a big difference. Continuing to lower it so that people can open their mind and think about something as opposed to being dug in. I don't know. I've always encouraged people to get along
Right.
in a constructive way. I didn't care about kumbaya. I didn't care if people got into it.
No, we just need to be productive.
Yeah, I didn't
and
care if
move
people
forward.
argued. I cared that we get the best outcome. And
The
if
1 degree.
and if this disagreement, I mean, come on, listen. The only way that we're going to grow, the only way that we're going to improve is we've got to change. And there are people in our organizations that just don't like change.
Yeah.
For me, as a leader, translation is we don't like improvement. Well, you can't stay here. I mean, that was just my world.
Right.
You just can't stay here because everything can be improved. Everything's got the capacity to grow. That's just a fundamental worldview that I have.
Well, and to me, as you get the parties in the, to your point, allowing teams to continue to have disagreements, if you leave it to their own and they're not going to resolve it, the relationship will get ruined and they will no longer work together. They just will avoid each other because they don't want the conflict. Typically, this is what I've seen. If you leave them to their own and they're not one to have the courage to confront and to do it well, it's a blame game. I've seen it go a million different ways, and 90% of the time it goes south when there's a major conflict or disagreement.
Well, I don't know about you, but I so rarely hear about a leader who pulls in both or three or however many people are involved in this skirmish,
right?
Pull them in and say,
what is going on?
I have blocked everything out for the next hour, for the next hour and a half, whatever the time period.
Right.
We're going to resolve this. So I'm here to referee and mediate, knowing that the only goal, is the very best decision for the organization.
Right.
The one that will solve this problem and hopefully not create new problems that we don't even have.
Right. Right.
I don't hear that.
No.
I don't hear that. What I hear is, yeah, I got this person, and they're kind of into it about this. And I will ask the question as a coach, well, what have you done? Well, I'm letting them work it out. And this has been,
good.
And this has been going on for how? Well, I pull them both in. So I pull one in and I talk to them. I pull the other one in. I talk to them. And I'm like, has it never crossed your mind to maybe pull them both in at the same time? Oh no, I haven't done that.
No, because there's fear. There's fear in the outcome.
I don't want to interfere. I said, but they may need your interference.
Mm-hmm. A focus on others.
If the grandsons if the grandsons are getting into a fist fight, I'm getting involved.
Mm-hmm.
If there's no other, if the parents aren't around. I mean, if they're roughhousing, I'm not getting involved. If it grows into fisticuffs, okay, we're stopping. We're going to talk. We're going to
ramp
this thing down a little bit. I don't understand. I just don't understand not serving people, because I just have learned win the argument, lose the relationship. And now let's assume we've got these two fictional directors. Okay, so now you got two directors. You think they're going to work together in the future in a spectacular way if the relationship has been damaged because they both dug in trenches and they both were getting into it, and they both completely disagreed with one another, you think suddenly there's going to be agreement and consensus and collaboration? Not happening. Not happening. Over time, it's just going to get more. There's going to be more vitriol, and
It'll be more avoidance. They just won't do it,
No,
and they'll
there's nothing
continue
good.
complaining. So that it's gonna continue to involve people. It's just not going to involve the two that are in conflict.
No, but both of their teams are going to have to deal with it.
And up.
Yeah.
And up the leadership change, I guarantee you they will hear about it continually
Yeah.
and try to help them resolve it.
So what do
when
you do as a leader? So
Well,
if
for me, I'm kind of like you. Sometimes I will do. Depends on if I know what the conflict is well, like I know the background on that well. If I don't know it and I'm not an expert in whatever the area is of concern, then sometimes I will educate myself one, so I have enough knowledge and understanding of what they're talking about that I can help navigate it with the right questions. So that's important sometimes. And with that, occasionally I'll get more information like what is like if there's third party. So for instance, I'll give you an example in our workday conversion right now. We had to agree on a method for conflict that arises throughout this 18-month project because I'm the executive sponsor at the top. And so if a conflict arises, and this goes to this point that we would have to navigate, if a conflict arises on how they're setting it up, somebody like the implementer is concerned we're not being strategic, we're trying to put old into new, we're not doing best practice, they are supposed to escalate to the two leads, which is typically a director or a high-level assistant director that knows the process as well. They have to try to work it out. If they can't work it out and the implementer can't get them to agree, it's supposed to escalate to me. So we would have to navigate. So in this case, to this point, and this is how I do life, but this is a good example for listeners, I would have to get the two people in the room and the implementer and go, okay, guys, how are we doing on this? I would start just letting them naturally in conversation come about. How are we doing on this implementation? Is there any inherent differences that we need to address? Because this is key. This is key for us that it's going to affect many people. So how are we going to navigate this? Hopefully through that conversation it comes up. If not, then I would say, implementer, you've been in the conversations. Are there any challenges you're hearing or concerns you have? Well, yes, there's this and that. And then it's me I know sometimes the answers, but I'm going to be curious. So I'm listening to all the parties and hearing it because something may come up that I didn't know. And then I can add that into the conversation. And typically I take notes, Randy, a little bit as we're going through it, just quick words. And then I'll start saying, okay, you're in charge of this area. What are your thoughts? You know about the area. What are your thoughts? Are there differences in the team? So those kind of things are what I look for. And then we start navigating and go, why do you feel so strongly it needs to be this way? Why do you feel so strongly it needs to be this way? Implementer, is there any one way? No, there's no one way. Both of these are fine. Then we have to start navigating and hopefully reach consensus and hopefully get to the point that both of them understand it doesn't have to be my way. We want the best way. To your point, what is best for the city moving forward? And from a strategy standpoint, I have said it over and over to my team members. It is not about today. It is what makes sense 5 years from today when we are all gone. Did we do what's right by the city? Did we set this up best practice? Is it easy to understand and maintain? So don't set it up with what you believe to be true or what a teammate's saying because they will be gone. And I want to make sure this makes sense for the good of the city long term. That's what counts. It's not our ego. It's not what I believe to be true. It is what is best for our city long term. And that's what counts. And usually I'm able to get them to reach consensus on that in that method. But doing it individually can work at times to start understanding each perspective, but bringing them in together, if you do it well, you can go further, faster, and keep moving down the road and heal the relationship. Because one, you've set a precedence that I'm going to listen. Two, you've taught them how to do it. So they're going to benefit from just being involved in that conversation and seeing that it can work. So it goes well beyond just me as a leader navigating the problem at hand. You are teaching them how to navigate the problems with one another and with their teams by showing them how to do it. Again, know the way, show the way, go the way. We talk about it over and over.
You also learn something about these people.
Correct.
I mean, I've had situations where somebody was just unyielding, just completely unyielding. And while you could read the unyielding as they're incredibly passionate about their position, but it could also be you realize that you've got somebody on your leadership team who is, I mean, this is how they are. They are always right. They are always the smartest person, and
unwilling to change.
So it can give you some insight that you may not have gotten otherwise. But yeah, I agree to your point. And was going to say that, but you beat me to it. It's a huge learning experience for both of them. So it's not just, don't view it as a time suck. Don't view it as, I don't need to get involved. These are adult people. No, you do.
No,
need
you're
to get
serving
involved.
them.
You're serving them, and they're going to benefit from it. Yeah.
Yeah. It is hard, but and Randy, you and I kind of talked about it before we hopped on the show. It's also hard to the point of being unwilling and not listening. There are times when I've had conversations and we just inherently disagree. That whether it's perspective, whether it's I've been in that position where I have to say, you know what, I hear you. I agree with you on this point, but I just have perspective that's broader, and I just can't agree with you on this. So we're okay to disagree. And typically, when I'm talking through it, I can't think of a case where somebody just said, "No, you're just wrong." I've never had that. They typically say, "Yeah, I agree with you, and I'm okay to disagree. You listened, you heard me out." And I say, listen and hearing are two different things. I listened for understanding, and I know where they're coming from, and I can speak to that calmly, respectfully. That's what matters, because sometimes you aren't just always going to agree. And I've had that, and I try to still help them as a leader to go, I understand how frustrated you are. Can you do this? Can you agree to do this one thing for me? And I've never had them say no. Most of the time they're like, yeah, I agree. I can do that for you. And because I try to keep it at their level. This is what you need to do as a leader to keep relationships, to your point. Relationships are everything in our world, especially in city government. Relationships with our vendors, with our people, with our peers, with one another, because that's how trust is built, and trust creates production. When you need help, they are there for you without questioning it. So you've got to keep up relationships even in difficult times. So for me, that's what counts, is respectfully disagreeing in those moments, because they aren't always kumbaya. You and I have talked about that. There are times, this is the way we're going to have to roll. I get it. I understand it. I just can't do what you're asking me to do, and I want you to understand it. And they aren't always going to love you. It's not going to happen.
No, I think there are times that you do have to kind of put your foot down and draw a line in the sand. I don't think that has to be.
And it's not often.
No, I don't think that has to be the majority of the time. I think the majority of the time you can work to consensus, but I've had times where just getting to consensus was way more challenging than it should have been, because you could see one person willing to acquiesce and another person completely unyielding.
I call it bulldogging it. Yeah, they just dig in.
Yeah, completely unwilling to acquiesce, and that showed me something. It's like, if they're doing that about this, they probably are doing that about everything, and I'm not sure I like that. I'm not sure that that's really beneficial for the team. A few points of advice, things to consider. One, slowing things down, calming things down. People get amped up, and the speed of our speech goes up. My pace is naturally kind of slow, this whole Southern thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a power in a pause. Take a breath. probably best to take a breath before we even speak. Thinking questions would be my third point.
Mm-hmm.
Don't think in statements, think in questions. That can be hard, but you can develop that. Just think of right now, in this moment, upon hearing what I've heard, what's the very best question that I can ask? And sometimes, guess what? The best question you can ask is the most obvious question that you can ask. And usually, I don't know about usually. Yeah, usually, in my experience, that most obvious question is the one that doesn't get asked.
Right.
Because we don't want to, we either don't want to show our ignorance or whatever. And to your point, yeah, we've got to listen for understanding. If you've got people at a director level, let's say, which has been our fictional example here, they're going to be dug in for a reason.
Right.
Now, that reason may not be valid in your mind, but in their mind, it is valid. And so finding out what that is, and sometimes people can't articulate that. I've had many situations where people said one thing and it wasn't that thing. That's what they thought was the thing, but really there was something else. It's a little bit like it's like the buyer who has an objection about buying and they say, well, it's the price, and maybe it is the price. But it may not be the price. It may be something.
Right.
It may be something else, and it takes a little bit of digging, a little bit of effort, and a whole lot of patience. To get to that. And if you can think in questions, you'll get there. And if you don't think in questions, you'll never get there.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Those would be my just things to think about as you choose to bring in people to try to mediate. And maybe they don't all feel like mediation, but that's what we're calling it, to try to overcome this conflict. Again, the outcome is the very best decision for the organization, the best decision that will not negatively impact my department, your department, their department.
Yeah, it is. If it's something that you feel as a leader you're not good at, I encourage you to get somebody who is good at it, and either be in the room, have them in the room so you can see it and see how it effectively works, and explain to the group, this is something we need to work through. And I brought in so-and-so that can help us navigate that. You have to have the courage to be able to say, this is not something I've done before, but we've got to work through it as a team and explain that. If you are good at it, you just have to have the courage to do it. And you need to make sure you're thinking about the approach, how you're going to frame it, how you're going to navigate it. If it goes south, you can't just go in blind and think it's going to turn out fine in an hour. I mean, you need to in my world, I've always found I need to think about the players. I need to know their personalities. You need to determine, is there something I need to educate myself on before I go in that room so that I'm aware, or I don't know enough to even know what I need to educate. So let me just figure out what the problem is. I mean, you need to go into it with some degree of a plan, even if it's simply to navigate that well and effectively. And like I said, have the courage to do it is where it all starts.
Thanks for watching and listening to Grow Great, a city government leadership podcast. For Lisa Norris, I'm Randy Cantrell. Be well, do good, grow great. The website is growgreat.com.